Now, some other big matches that are happening tomorrow. Arsenal, they're taking on already eliminated Kairat Almaty. Arsenal look to remain unbeaten in this competition, but the biggest question is whether they'll rotate after a huge loss to Manchester United over the weekend. Manchester City, they'll look to bounce back from last week's loss to Bodo Glimt when they take on Galatasaray. And reigning champions PSG, who have already had 2 losses and a draw in the league phase, look to close out strong against Newcastle. Now, Arsenal are automatically already in the top 2, but teams 2 through 32 on the table, all these teams, they have something on the line on Wednesday. For teams in spots 3 through 18, they're fighting to finish in the top 8. Teams 33 through 36, those teams have already been eliminated, so tomorrow will be their last match in this competition. Now let's take a look at the tiebreaker rules, just as a refresher for everything that we'll be looking at tomorrow. So it starts off with overall goal difference. After that is goals scored in league phase, away goals scored in league phase, total wins in league phase, and away wins in league phase. So we'll go down the line if there are some tiebreakers here because several teams are on the same exact points. So this is year 2 of having this new, what's the word here?
Format.
This new format here. So year 2, we're getting, Jeff, near the end of year 2 league phase specifically. What have been your thoughts on this? Have your thoughts changed? Did you maybe start off liking it and now you don't like it? Do you like the old format better?
Well, this is the Swiss format, isn't it, Claudia? For me, the jury is still out a little bit. I'm not entirely sure we're all used to it yet, and I'm not sure the teams know how to play this format. In principle, I don't like it because it's more matches. Even though we all love football, it's an extra 64 games. And I think there's already an overload in other competitions. So for that reason, I don't like it. And this was created, this was a reaction to the Super League. This is UEFA heading that off because the big clubs wanted more marquee matchups, be able to play each other. I can see for and against. The honest answer is I don't actually know. There's some pluses because you think back to the old format. There were dead rubbers. There were the games that were just meaningless, and often you looked at the groups and you knew exactly who was going to go through. I just think we've perhaps seen this year a slight change in particularly Arsenal, if you like. I think the clubs last season thought, OK, it's a league phase, the early games, we've still got time. But now we're seeing they've got, it can catch up on you very, very quickly. So, yeah, I think it's got pros and cons, Claudia.
Yeah. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think that 4 case is certainly worth noting because I do think that while it is sort of the big clubs wanting more marquee matchups, that's great for fans. There is the one big game in every round where you can tune in and say, well, that's obviously the game that I want to watch in this round. So I think that idea actually not only makes it more interesting, but actually has also the effect of helping some of the smaller clubs. The smaller clubs actually have more of a chance. This is a format that is tilted towards the smaller teams in the competition because they play teams of a similar level and they play fewer games against teams of higher level opposition as a result. So those teams actually have more of a chance because of the entertainment factor on offer. I think Jeff's point about too many games is absolutely something that's worth considering. But in the end, people like it so much that they want to watch it. It's not like people have stopped watching it as a result of there being more games. I think the biggest issue, if I were to have an issue with it, is the lack of jeopardy. I think that's in the overall. You look at, we're about to have a 48-team World Cup in which 16 teams will be eliminated in the group stage. That's a third of the competition. For how many number of games? It's the same here in the Champions League. We're playing more league phase games to eliminate fewer teams. That is an overall issue I have with sports, not even just football, but all sports. There is this idea we have to keep these teams going longer and longer and longer, and that makes it so they're not really playing interesting games until quarterfinal, semifinal, and that's the bit that we love about the Champions League. But until then, there are a lot of games that don't have a lot on them.
Yeah, look, I think people still watch it because it is the best club competition in the world, right? And I mean, that's why we're enthralled by it. Yeah, there's bigger matches each week. Bigger teams playing each other. But there's also, what's the term used? Dead rubber games. There's more dead rubber games in this thing for me. I think the format is a little bit too lenient. I've said this from the start. I think the idea of, I took Matchday 7, the idea of not being able to go back and play someone in your stadium, for example, Tottenham wins against Dortmund. right? Wouldn't it be great to see Tottenham go to that yellow wall and play again the following week or throughout the competition, right? Like, we miss all of those. Bodo Glimt, a major upset against Manchester City. Wouldn't you love to see little Bodo Glimt go to City and see if they can do it there? Like, we missed that part of it, and that part I don't like. But it's the leniency for sure. The number of games that's a massive number added to the schedule, and that's been a topic of conversation throughout. But for me, not seeing the home and home, I can't wrap my head around, like, okay, did we really do good because we won that game? Like, I don't get to go.
The games don't relate to each other.
Yeah, like, it's hard for me to put the puzzle together.
It feels almost sort of transactional, doesn't it? You know, and I agree. I love that balance of, you know, always straight after the game. Yeah, let's wait till we get them back to our place. I like that, and you would go away. But the argument was teams were going away if they had their second leg at home and just play for a draw. And so that we got a lot of games that weren't great for that reason. I slightly disagree with you as well, Chris, that it favours the smaller clubs. This format, with the lack of jeopardy and so many teams going through, and with the extra matches, I think it favours the big clubs who have got the deeper squads, because injuries are a factor as well. So I think it's easier for them. It's designed for the big clubs to get through.
And the margin for error is sort of inherent in the number of teams that make it through to the knockout round. We saw last year Manchester City scrape in over the line. They're the 23rd team in, but they got in, despite the fact that they probably would have been eliminated in the previous format. So I sort of understand that point. I think it's more about the scheduling. I think the overall problem, if you look at the table right now, the top six of the English Premier League teams are in the top 11.
It's great, isn't it?
There are some people who will have a favorable view of that. I think in the overall, this competition needs to figure out how to balance all of Europe in being in the major conversation at this level, because I think right now the Premier League has a level of finance that is just dwarfing everyone else in Europe right now. You see it in the table right there. And the only other teams that can compete are Bayern, Real Madrid, PSG, Barcelona, and Sporting, I guess, is sort of the one outlier, but it's the teams you would expect to be there. I think the Premier League right now is too dominant, and that problem is only going to get worse, because as their financial gap on everyone else compounds year over year, and they buy the best teams, the best players from all the other teams in this competition every year, that problem only gets worse. And so right now, on the path that we are heading, there will be another Super League attempt, in my view. I think at some point in the next 5 years, whether it's the teams outside of England combining together, we need to join together if we're going to attack the Premier League. But I don't think this has solved the problem, which you mentioned, Jeff, which is the big teams outside of England in the Champions League thought, we need to figure out a way to make ourselves bigger. And so the competition is sort of catered to them. I still think that hasn't solved that problem, and that the political problem of the decline of relevance of teams outside of England is going to need to be solved in some way that resembles a Super League.
Well, I do want to continue talking about what changes you guys would make, but I want to know what you guys in the YouTube comments think. Do you guys agree with the guys here, whether or not we like this new league phase format, and what you guys would change specifically? We're hearing a little bit from Witty, but Jeff, what would you want to change here?
This is not a new discussion about the dominance of the Premier League. I'm not sure why the Premier League should be penalised for having a successful product. And the other leagues need to look at themselves and where they've failed. And you look at the finances, say in Spain, for example, the clubs, they're not well-run clubs. Equally, the Premier League's dominance, if you look over the last 10 years, it's not like a Premier League club has won the Champions League every single year.
No.
Not by a long chalk. So that kind of puts that argument away, because they're not dominating this competition. They're not winning this competition all the time. This is a different type of competition. How the other leagues catch up, that's down to them to a degree.
Right. Which I didn't mean what I said as a criticism of the Premier League. I think it's sort of the reality, and teams are going to respond, or the other leagues, the other countries are going to respond in some way. I don't think the current path is sustainable. I don't think Real Madrid's going to sit back and go, well, England, you took our lunch, and that's sort of the end of us. They're going to respond in some way.
Well, they did respond. They tried, they're prime movers behind the Super League.
Right.
The Super League so far has failed. Now, whether they can muster enough support from elsewhere, and bear in mind the Premier League has changed its constitution, there'll be no English clubs in the Super League. So what will the Super League look like without any English clubs?
I think it'll have, the big Italian teams, the big Spanish teams, and maybe those matchups will be of note and interesting to viewers across the globe.
Do you think that would be enough of a draw?
I think it'd be a bigger draw than sort of what happens now, at least in Spain, for instance, where there's, all the big Spanish clubs play 4 big games every year, and the other 34 are sort of note. They're not like completely uninteresting, but they're not as massive as they could be. But yeah, I think those big teams are going to have a response at some point.
The one change I would make to this, only eliminating 12 teams after you have 8 match days.
Yeah.
I'd get down to 16. Of course, that doesn't jive with adding more games, and I know UEFA wants to do that, but I would get down to 16. I would eliminate half the group after we've just played more match days than we've ever played in Champions League. So after 8 match days, I'd go right to the round of 16.
Do you think that we would see, so if you take away all those matches, do you think it would make the remaining matches even that much better because the players have that much more rest?
Well,
and
sure,
not playing those
because
games?
you can't qualify in 24. You've got to qualify in the first 16.
Thanks for watching this video from Morning Footy. For all news and insights regarding leagues around the world like EFL, Serie, and all UEFA competitions, both men's and women's, don't forget to sign up for Paramount+.